Just when you think you've healed your old trauma and made all these positive changes in your life, getting back involved with your family can throw you for a giant loop. And it's happened to all of us. We try to connect with people we love and do something nice for them, but just being around family members, even the ones who have always been kind to us, can kind of touch off invisible triggers that fire up the old hurts again. You're not being difficult on purpose. It's that certain stimuli set off dysregulation in your nervous system, and then it's like the genie's out of the bottle. You get prickly, maybe you get weepy, you get angry, you can't tell if people's comments that hurt you were meant to hurt you, or, if maybe you're just being too sensitive. But either you learn tools to sort of bring it back down, or it can get to be all too much and a meltdown begins. The hurt emotions are too big to hide, and you say things and everything gets weird. And no matter what you do, the shame just gets the better of you. I've been there. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Nia, and she writes, "Hi, Anna. I just had a pretty bad issue with my family that for the life of me, I have no idea what to do." All right, I've got my pencil. I'm going to circle things to come back to on a second reading, but I'm just going to read Nia's letter and see what's going on and see if I can help. Okay, she says, super brief background on me. I was diagnosed with depression, generalized anxiety, and PTSD after feeling safe enough to share this information with a psychiatrist. I've been in and out of treatment since I was 13 years old. I'm 31. I was raised in a single-parent household, absent father, with 2 older siblings. My mom was violent, volatile, disrespectful, and seclusive, so I don't make a big deal out of voicing my opinion or wants or needs. 5 years ago, I moved out on my own for my own well-being and cut off my entire family, as well as my only friend, the only one I knew from high school. We'd be here all day if I elaborated why I cut her off, she says. The only person I talked to was my aunt. This aunt has been pretty understanding of me for a few things. I'm different compared to my family, but she normally seems to be okay with it. My aunt had planned an event for a portion of the 3-day weekend, and she invited me to come. It was on a Tuesday, and I just got a new job, so I couldn't. We'd already made plans to see The Little Mermaid live action, so she planned to stay for the entire week. Yay, we made plans to hang out. One of these plans was a surprise for my niece. I paid for and planned for the 3 of us to visit an amusement park that my niece had never been to before. I wanted this trip to be a makeup trip for my niece since I couldn't join them during the week. My aunt lets a relative that I've never met know, and the relative asks, is it okay if I come along? All right, I accept. And it's only her and her son, so I have no trouble with it. And then this relative invites more and more people because I said yes the first time. And this is family. I felt like I had to be as accommodating as possible. I think this started to trigger me because on the day of the event, of the trip, the relative invites even more people, and I get a little mad. This took our group from just 3 to 11. Even though this relative did pay me back, I felt like I was being taken advantage of, but never voiced how I felt. My aunt didn't comment on it. We get to the park, and my niece is a little bummed. It wasn't as fun as it looked because we got there late and had to wait for the big kid rides. Me, on the other hand, I was starting to feel a butterfly in my stomach, so I felt like hyper-focused on her. She said she was bored, and I immediately tried to rack my brain for a solution to make her feel better. We got off the ride and she's hungry, so I posed the idea to the group to get lunch and split up. No one answered me. I posited the idea again. No one answered me. I started to get even more anxious. I actually don't remember what happened to lead us to us splitting up. I know that I said the idea once more with a bit more bite. I know I probably had a lot more bite, and I even got bossy. And my aunt turned to me and said, wait. She was talking with the relatives after coming from the bathroom. I had to have heard her because 1 minute she said that, and the other we were splitting up. My memory is kind of fuzzy. I was at that point aware that I was overstimulated, there it is, and upset, so I chose to go solo in the park. My aunt came up to me and and she was a bit fluttery. And I didn't know how to explain, but she kind of had her hands up, waving around her face, and she was saying to me, "You can't do that." I don't know. I tuned out everything else. I needed a moment. She then told me that my niece wanted to come with me, and I told her that I was just going to go solo. She then turned to my niece and said, "Nia's going to ride some wild rides, so she's going to go off on her own." And it took a while for me to calm down, but when I did, I went through the park myself, but was still quite upset. And when we went home, I tried to talk to my aunt while I was still overstimulated and dysregulated, which was a bad idea. And predictably, I couldn't talk on the same level as I normally did when I was calm. I completely let my inner child take over. She kept her tone calm, but there were a few things that she said that had made me even angrier. She implied that the trip was for the family. It wasn't. That the relatives that were over would have never gotten the chance to meet up if not for this event. And then she asked me, when she caught up to me, what she should have asked. I couldn't give her a good response, and I was probably almost screaming at that point. It was not the right time for me to have this depth of a conversation. But what gave me pause was her saying that I was controlling when I said my plan, like I wanted them all to do what I wanted to do. And it wasn't my intention, but I know when I feel someone isn't listening to me, my suggestion can get firm. But I didn't think I was controlling. I guess my question to you is, how do I apologize? I feel like I don't really have a leg in this race, and I guess I'm just trying to figure it out. I don't know. I don't want to lose what little support I have right now. And my first instinct is to isolate and avoid her. I really want to be able to tackle this issue head on rather than just ignoring it altogether. Thanks for reading this. And that's from Nia. Okay, Nia, I relate to what happened to you so much. And sometimes, when I pick letters that I relate to and I know what to say. And this one that's like tricky. This is just one of those things, like when you have an injured nervous system from growing up in a rough family, these things happen. And it gets better the more that you have practice self-regulating, returning from dysregulation, re-regulating. When you get good at it, part of that is you will learn to express yourself in the moment rather than after you're already upset. And I think a lot of this is like, it was just a difficult situation. There's just no way around it. People had a different idea about what the thing was than you, and you had done something nice and paid for them, and I totally get it. So first, you said, I'm different compared to my family, but she's okay with it. And you didn't say what it was. I don't know what it is, like maybe you're gay or I don't know. But your aunt accepts you. She accepts you. And so you trust her, and you wanted to do something nice for her and her daughter. So you bought, the live action show would have been expensive. Also the amusement park, that's a lot of money. So you put a lot into that. And so a little bit, like you're asking me to help you identify how to apologize. So part of that is we probe and go, is there any part of this where you contributed? And so one thing is that a little bit possibly you were sort of saying that you were doing this for them, but a little bit, I don't know, if it were me, I'd be doing it a lot for me too. Like I would really like to go to the amusement park with family. I would really like to see a live show. And a little bit it's couched as well. It's to make up for I wasn't here this week. And so I'm just wondering, like, is it possible it wasn't really convenient for them to do something just with you, just the three of you, that because the rest of the family was in town, there was a pressure on her to see other people? So when you're trying to prepare an apology, you think about where was the other person's, where were they, where was their mind? And so if we just assume that she felt pressure to include everybody, and then she got negative pressure from you for including everybody, like I've been in her shoes too for doing that, if that's what happened. So one of the things that you can prepare for your apology is an understanding that she was in a difficult position. And she didn't feel like she could say no to the family, and that when you got upset, that really, put pressure on her, put her in a difficult position. So I know that's not fair to you, but I think that might be what she was going through. Your aunt had invited you, But then all these other people are coming, and then more, and those people invited people. And so I'm wondering, this is really between you and your aunt, right? It's really between you and her, and maybe she didn't have control over whether those other people invited a bunch of people. And I feel like I've been everybody in this story. I've been the person who got invited and didn't get it, that it was originally intended as like a bonding experience for some very close relatives, the ones you trust, the ones you love the most. And then these other people came who presumably you don't feel entirely safe with, other family members. So 11, and also just going to an amusement park with 11 people, what a hassle. Everybody trying to meet up and eat at the same time, and which rides, what a hassle. Like the best way to go to an amusement park is like one adult and two kids, or one adult and one kid, really, because then kids have to do what the parent wants to do, and there's not a lot of disagreement about that. That's true for traveling too. Like just 11 just sounds really hard, and would lead to a lot of time standing there not making a decision, or everybody taking so long to get their food and all that. So I would be overstimulated too. Oh, and by the way, for those of us who get dysregulated, like amusement parks are really fun, but they're really overstimulating. They're so overstimulating. So are shopping malls, street fairs, just anything with like crowds of people and waiting, and it's hot and you can't just get something. And plus your senses are being like, woo, on roller coasters and stuff. In a way, I've always kind of liked roller coasters. I might be growing out of it, but I've always liked them. And I think that for somebody who gets dysregulated, like a big startle response, a big bunch of adrenaline can give you a reset. So it feels kind of good. It sort of brings you into yourself. So I don't know, but I'm just sort of like, I don't know, an amusement park, delicate family situation sounds like a powder keg to me. Sounds like things are going to get heavy. All right. And then it did. So you got a little bit mad. And they paid you, but it wasn't the money. It was just this feeling like you had this unexpressed need and this unexpressed resentment about it. I didn't see where you really said enough about it for them to be clear that they didn't really understand what was going on with you, but that this was really important to you. You wanted to be with the people you trusted the most. You didn't want to do something with everybody, and you didn't feel you were in a position to say no. So when those other people came and your aunt said yes, then it's like you were in a position. So now everybody's been put in a position by these unwitting people who just thought this would be fun. And then they invite their friends, and now really nobody can say anything, and it just sucks. But you have this tendency that you want to, you kind of want to make it okay for everybody. And when the kid said she was bored, you're like, oh, I gotta make her not bored. Like, I totally know how that is too. And so this is what, I hope I'm not projecting on you, but like a little bit of codependent stuff kicks up because of how you grew up. Like, oh no, somebody's unhappy. I got to fix it. I have to abandon my needs. I have to not speak up about my boundaries, my limits on here's what I want to do. I want to eat lunch now. Whoever wants to come with me, and everybody else go do what you're going to do, and we'll meet up at 4:00, something like that. But you lose all your power. Like, it takes a lot of personal power to be able to speak up in a situation like that. There is so much pressure to just go with the flow, just go with whatever other people are dictating. And then you get resentful because you're like, who are they? Why are they more important than me? What about what I wanted? But as you heal more, you will get better, faster, and more graceful about speaking up about what works for you and doesn't work for you. And even when you realize, like, a little late, like, this is getting kind of overstimulating for me. I'd like to do something quiet. And the point when your niece wanted to go with you and you didn't want to do it, I have been in your shoes before, where part of it is I'm just so overstimulated, I just need to run away right now. But part of it is also, I don't know, like a pride thing. I can't back down. I just don't know how to get out of this tree I've climbed up to get away from the problem. And then so it becomes this very black and white thinking that's hurtful to people. Boy, have I been there. And it hurts them. And, I just always want to explain to them. I was in a situation like that a couple years ago, and it really hurt some people, but I needed to leave a camping trip. And and instead of dealing, it wasn't safe to talk about. The people who were making the whole thing unstable for me and frightening and weird, you couldn't really tell them what it was. They were so volatile and yelling and stuff that it just wasn't safe. So I just left and called one person I trusted after I was already gone and said, I'm gone. I know, right? It's a long story. I won't go into the details. I don't want to like implicate all the people in my life about it. But it was a really rough thing that really put a rupture in my friendship with the person who was really hard for me to deal with. And it's taken a couple years to, at least we're patching it up. But sometimes things just get too far to gracefully do anything about it. And I was freaking out. Somebody was driving recklessly was what it was, and we were driving to this swimming hole in a desert on a dirt road. And I think I have a lot of like old stuff about that from my hippie parents driving on dirt roads, and it wasn't safe and we got stranded. And I don't know. I don't really like blaming, oh, I have trauma about that. That's why it was bad. They were driving really recklessly and it was dangerous and I didn't feel safe and I wanted to get out of the car. And I couldn't speak up about it gracefully. And so I didn't get out of the car until I was completely flipped out about it. And I irrationally said I was going to like walk back to the campground 11 miles in 100 degrees heat in flip-flops, which, yeah, no, you can't do that. And I was like, I don't know, going to hitchhike or something. I just had this very bad idea. And luckily other people in the group just, came and talked me down and drove me home. But it ended up like one bad thing after another. Like that didn't get handled well. The next thing didn't get handled well. And soon I just had to leave. It was such a bummer. So I just resonated so strongly with this, and I get it about amusement parks. They're very dysregulating. So the part where you said, like you had to rack your brain and you couldn't find a solution and you couldn't think of the thing to say, it sounds to me, dear Nia, like you were dissociating. And sometimes people who have been through trauma, like we have, when it hits the fan, it's more than dysregulation. It's like you can't really you're up and out. Your brain isn't functioning. You got this blank spot in there, and that's when a lot of time can pass without speaking up. Your perception of what's going on is not reliable, and you know it. And so, in a way, considering, I think you handled it really well. You did get out of there. It sounds like you heard yourself yelling and you removed yourself. And I'm sure that was uncomfortable for them. But you know what? This auntie loves you and accepts you. And so when you go to her and you let her know that you thought about this, here's the formula for how to do a really good apology. Now she knows you and she knows you've been through trauma, and I bet she knows you get dysregulated sometimes. So you can say, in a way where you don't in any way make excuses for yourself, a really good apology that works to heal a relationship. You just talk about how the other person might have been hurt and what your part in that was. And you don't try to discuss other things about it. If you're lucky, they will discuss those with you afterwards. They'll say, that's okay, I did this. So you would just say, Auntie, I'm so sorry. I really got overwhelmed at the amusement park, and I didn't treat you very well. And I'm embarrassed about how I acted, and I really wanted to apologize. I wish I could have thought how to handle that better. I was so looking forward to spending the day with you and your daughter, and I love you guys, and I hope we can get together again, and that you can give me another chance to have a good day with you. You don't have to blame the other people for coming. You got in a little bit, like I got kind of overstimulated, and I love you, and I realize my behavior affected you, and I'd like to see you again. If you really want to, you can say, I hope you can forgive me. But you don't get into long stories about, how I was traumatized and I can't really take things. Like if she wants to talk about it with you and ask questions, maybe that's where the conversation will go. But you can really open a person's heart who's been hurt by you when you don't focus on those aspects of the story. They're always there, right? And you just focus on, here's what I did and here's how I would feel if somebody did that to me. You can even say, if you agree with me, like, I'm really sorry. I think I put you in a position where you had other guests and it was awkward, and I'm sorry I put you in that position. That's a nice thing to say. So if she's as good an aunt as you've experienced her to be, she might have sympathy for you, or she might realize that's not what you wanted. And you can talk about that without guilt tripping her, without blaming her or blaming other people. And you don't have to beat up on yourself either. Like keep it right-sized. Humility means you don't put yourself on a pedestal, but you also don't put yourself, groveling on the ground. And you're just like, I'm sorry, I got overwhelmed. And I put you in an awkward position, and I'm sorry about that. I realized that was hurtful, and I wish I could take it back. So just something like that. So that's how you can make an apology. And if you're like me, it's scary sometimes when you're about to do it. It's a very tender and humble act. It takes courage and it takes emotional honesty to do it. And I think part of the courageous part is the fear that facing the fear that if you acknowledge your part, you're going to give them more fuel for the fire to like blame you and attack you. But if they did do that, I don't think it will, like seldom does that happen, but if they did, I've had it happen that way, you still come out stronger because you took care of your part in it. You took care of your side of the street. So if somebody goes, yeah, well, you know, you really did put me in a position and blah, 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 you can go, all right, well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that. I hope we have another chance sometime out of the conversation before you start crying or wanting to go into the long story about it. Does that sound doable to you? I think it could help. So for anybody who struggles with getting overwhelmed and sensory overload and can't express yourself because of dissociation and dysregulation coming up, I use these techniques I call the daily practice. It's a very specific writing technique followed by a very simple meditation that can help bring you back to center in those moments. You can also do it, you know, I do it first thing in the morning and then later in the day, just as maintenance, just to kind of keep my brain strong, to keep my emotions in their lanes where I need them, and to be able to communicate and express myself. So if you want to try that, I've got a free course. You can click on this little square right here and get right in for free. And I will see you very soon.